Welcome to Literary AF Podcast.
Bonjour and adieu.
Adieu?
Sure. Hi. Welcome to Literary AF Podcast. My name is Sheldon.
I'm Danny.
And we're back.
We are back.
Yeah, we took a brief... Well, I was gone for dead father-related issues.
Sheldon had some things that needed to be done that were important.
Danny was sick as a dog.
I was sick. I still am. If you hear like a low grumble at some point through the podcast, that's just my tummy. It's been very upset all day.
Oh, and also I got a dog without telling you guys. He's just hiding back there, so if you hear him growling. Let's see, what else? Oh, so I went through a loss in the family, and then the idea of trying to wrap up Les Miserables while also dealing with that was unbearable. So, but we're gonna give it a try today.
Yeah.
So this is Les Mis Part 3. Let's see. Should we do a catch up? Okay, I know exactly where we ended off.
Do you? Because I don't remember.
Valjean joins the barricade. That's how. Or he gets the letter saying where Marius is.
Right.
And then. Oh, so spoiler alert. Well, anyway, so we have Valjean. Oh, I can't go through all of Les Mis again. You know what? Watch the musical. Watch one of the movie versions.
Yeah, catch up. It's fine.
Yeah. Listen to our last two episodes.
You could just go back and re-listen to the last two. They were pretty long, though. I think they were like 45 to 50 minutes.
Yeah, it might be faster just to read the book.
It would be faster to at least watch a movie.
Just kidding. But anyway, so where we last left off, Marius thought Cosette was moving to London, so then he got all emo and decided to go to the barricade.
That's right, yeah.
He decided to send her one last letter being like, I'm so sorry I couldn't join you in England. I've decided that I would sacrifice my life with my friends, and leaving the place where he was at. He sent the letter with Gavroche. Gavroche decided to go in the middle of the night so that he could make it back to the barricade. Going in the middle of the night means that he was intercepted by an old man who he thought was the porter, who was actually the master of the house, who we know as Jean Valjean.
The mysterious stranger.
The mysterious white-haired man who goes by like 10 different names in the book. And who Hugo constantly is like, ooh, a strange old man, takes the letter.
Yeah.
So Jean Valjean knows where Marius is. He has a little crisis of conscience moment similar to when the man was getting sent to prison in his place. Where he's like, oh, look, all my problems could go away. You know,
I just let this child die.
Yeah, he's like, this guy who's going to steal my daughter away from me, I could just let him go and then never have to worry about it again. And then he's like, well, that's pretty selfish then, because that would be sad. He's like, so then he decides he's going to go to the barricade and save this kid. And that is where the final part of Les Mis starts. Or somewhere in there. I'm not sure exactly where the events are, but I know like book 5 is basically Jean Valjean is at the barricade.
Right.
So the first half of this part I read like 3 weeks ago. So I'm going to be struggling a little bit to keep things in the right order. So far at the barricade, Eponine has already died.
Yes, that happened last book.
Yeah. Javert has been caught and captured, and Enjolras has tied him up and left him in the tavern. Gavroche is alive, and he was gone from the barricade, but he's on his way back. And then I think everyone else, like all the other major characters, are still like alive and perched on the barricade. Spoiler alert! That is going to change very soon. Yeah. It's called Les Miserables for a reason.
Yep.
Not a lot of people live to the end. So anyway, we're at the barricade. And Marius has saved the day by he grabbed the bucket of gunpowder and was about to blow up the barricade, including himself and the French soldiers
and all of his friends.
Yeah, but it was mainly the French soldiers and him.
Right.
Because he rushed up to the front lines, right on top of the barricade. And then, so in his act of almost sacrifice, the soldiers backed away. Marius has become the hero of the barricade. and him and Enjolras are now like the two leaders of the little resistance group.
Right.
They also, during the night, build up the barricade a lot higher so that the soldiers aren't going to be able to overtake it on their first run again.
Just a big run up.
Yeah. At a certain point, I believe it's the start of book 5, they bring out cannons and start blasting away at the barricade as long as they can. But the way that they've set things up, it doesn't have a lot of impact at first.
Right.
Like it kind of just like clatters among all this stuff. More stuff kind of like droops in to fill the hole, and then it's still a barricade.
Right.
When a mysterious old man shows up, he shows up wearing... Oh, okay, so I know what happens next. They get there, they realize that pretty much all of them are going to die. So I don't know if Jean Valjean's quite arrived yet, or if he's there and he's like standing in the background. But they realize that a bunch of people are about to die, and that Marius wants to send like injured men to like leave now before the soldiers like restart up their attack.
Right.
And he's basically like, anyone who can't fight, I don't think they have enough guns might be what it is. They have like 60 guns and 65 people or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
So he's like, anyone who's injured or anyone who has like a family at home, like leave now basically.
Right.
And first the guys don't want to go, and then when Marius is like, we're all going to die here, then all of a sudden more than the 5 want to go, and they're like kind of struggling to find the right amount of people to go. Finally, they've settled on the 5 or whatever it is, but they're like, oh, how are we going to escape without being caught? And then a mysterious old man with white hair, you know who it is at home, he shows up, and he has with him, I don't exactly remember where he gets them, but he has outfits that resemble the National Guard uniforms.
Okay.
And I can't remember if there's a part where he picks them up earlier. Maybe it's something that gets cut out in the abridged copy, or maybe it's something I'm just forgetting. But he has these uniforms, and that's how he slips through too, is he's wearing the uniform.
Right.
He slips through the front lines, he slips past the barricade. He's Mr. Strong, former convict who can climb walls, so he can get over no problem. And also, the front barricade is very like well guarded, and that's where all the attacks are happening.
Right.
And there's a back little alley where it's like a tiny thing, like a tiny alley that nobody checks, and that's where people constantly slip in and out.
Right.
I think that's where Marius came through.
Right.
So, JVJ, that's more clumsy than Jean Valjean.
It is, yeah, because it's the same number of syllables.
That's right. So, we'll just say Valjean.
Valjean.
He shows up with the uniforms, he gives them to the guys, and then they're kind of suspicious of this guy at first, like, who is he? Is he another spy? But then it might be Valjean himself, but somebody spots like snipers on the roof, and then Valjean takes a rifle and is able to, he doesn't kill them, but he like shoots their hats off or something.
Okay.
Like it's a very clear like, I could kill you if I want to moment.
Right.
Where there's like 3 guys and he does it 3 times right in a row.
Right.
And everyone's like, ooh, who is this mysterious and impressive marksman? And so the snipers back off. The people in the camp are like, okay, we trust him. And then they want to like give him some kind of service. I think either for saving them from the snipers or for giving them the uniforms.
Mm.
And they're like, if you have any like favors, ask us. And then Valjean saw Javert and he was like, the only thing I ask is that you'll let me kill that prisoner. And they're like, yeah, we were going to kill him anyway. Go for it. So Marius knows Javert from earlier when he had his run-in with the Thénardiers.
Right.
And Marius wanted to save Javert. And so when he sees this mysterious old man, and I can't remember if Marius puts it together that this is the old man who was with Cosette. I don't think he does at first.
Okay.
Because it's just because he doesn't expect to see him in this place or something. So he doesn't immediately assume it's him.
Right.
So anyway, Valjean takes Javert away. If you know the musical, you know what happens. He gets him away from the prying eyes to that back alley again, and then instead of shooting him, he cuts the top, or he takes a knife, and Javert's like, here we go, convict showing his true colors. And then Valjean cuts the cords and is like, run, like, I've spared your life, like, go. And then he's like, if I survive through this, you can find me at, and he gives him his address. Basically, like, come arrest me later if you want.
Yeah.
And so Javert is shocked, doesn't know what to do, but then just as he's running away, Jean Valjean fires a pistol into the air so that the guys think that Javert was killed.
Right.
And then Marius hears the pistol shot and was like, oh, this guy did murder Javert. So then things progress. There's a lot of, like, sitting around the barricade, a lot of, like, we're getting attacked randomly, and then nothing. And then at a certain point, they're, like, worried that they're running out of ammo. So then Gavroche decides he's going to sneak down the front lines and start robbing the bodies. Much like what his father did to save Marius's father, except for it ends very poorly for Gavroche. It's definitely, I'd put it as one of the sadder scenes of the book. He's, like, scampering from body to body, and he's in this musical, he has that song, like, Little People.
Little People, yeah.
And a lot of those lines are right in the book.
Right.
Because he's kind of, like, mocking the soldiers as he's doing it.
Yeah.
And as he goes from body to body, as he gets closer to the actual front line, they start shooting at him. And at first he's like, haha, you can't catch me. And then he's like, oh, he caught me a little bit, but I'm still up. And then they shoot him like 3 or 4 times. And he's like, yeah, I'm straight dead.
Yeah.
So that's how poor little Gavroche ends. Shortly after, the barricade is such a long section of the book.
Right.
And, like, so much happens. Eventually, the soldiers start to break through again. At one point, they decide that the barricade's not going to hold, so they all go up to the tavern and just start shooting through the windows, as, like, they've just, like, walled themselves up in this, like, building.
Right.
And that might actually be the point where Jean Valjean takes Javert away, because Javert was being held in the tavern.
Right.
So I'm not exactly sure the order of the stuff there. The main important thing is after the barricade gets breached, it gets blasted by the cannons, and then the soldiers come, like, marching through. Up to this point, Valjean has been, like, being as a medic, and he shot at those snipers but he didn't kill anybody. And he specifically, like, won't pick up a gun during any of the fights.
Mm-hmm.
He's just there to help people. And so he's helping people, he's doing whatever he can. At a certain point, when he knows that the battle's lost, and Marius is injured, Marius gets he gets, like, slashed with a sword in the head or something. Like, it's like a superficial wound, but there's a lot of blood.
Yeah.
And he might have got, like, shot or stabbed in the side or something too. But there's, like, basically he's fine, but he won't be fine for long.
Okay.
So Valjean basically scoops up his passed out corpse. The last thing Marius remembers before he passes out is a pair of strong arms seizing him and lifting him up. And Valjean takes him running, and he goes to... He can't escape through the back because he can't climb with the body. He's too old to pull that stunt again.
Right.
He also knows the soldiers are coming from the front. So he finds a sewer grate. And that sewer is one of the legendary parts of this book. But before they get deep into the sewer section, the other people in the barricade, most of Marius's friends are dead at this point. There's I can't remember all their names off the top of my head, but most of them are gone. It's the only ones left are Enjolras and Grantaire, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The one who's in love with Enjolras.
Right.
He was passed out in the bar for the entire fight. And then when the soldiers came marching through, he basically woke up in the tavern to see this. And then he runs to, like, be by Enjolras' side. And, like, they have a little touching moment before they're tragically murdered.
Shot, yeah.
So everyone in that area is dead.
Right.
The soldiers are marching through. Valjean is now carrying a mostly almost lifeless corpse through the sewers. In the main version of the book, there is a long, dedicated chapter of just, like, how the sewer system in Paris works. In the abridged version that I have, it's cut down quite a bit. So it's just, like, they just describe like, oh, if he goes like where the like where it's elevated upwards, like if it's a hill or whatever, then he knows that's leading towards an exit. And in the middle is like a kind of large sewage pit, and and then and if he goes to where it's going downwards, that's closer to the river. And so he wants to go, he doesn't want to surface in the middle of the city and be caught with a bleeding revolutionary. So he wants to go downwards towards the river and escape that way.
Right.
That's basically the explanation that you get. But if you read the full version, I understand it's quite a bit more detailed than that. It goes into huge detail about how the sewage system works.
I've seen a couple tweets that were like, find someone who loves you the way
Victor Hugo.
The way Victor Hugo loves the 18th century France sewers.
Yeah, it's one of the things that people talk about this book. But that's why I've always, like, for any other book, I'll say don't get the abridged, read the full version. You want the full experience. But this one, I'm like, no, get the abridged.
Like the one specific point I know about the Les Mis book is this 80-page sewer system sequence.
And in my version, the sewer system sequence is still long.
Yeah.
But it's cut out the stuff that doesn't involve the characters. So you got Valjean, he's basically just hauling this body through the sewers. There's a lot of sections of it's so dark he doesn't know where he is. He's trying to figure it out. He's kind of going through moral dilemmas the whole time because he still doesn't really want to save Marius, but he feels he has to. At one point, they almost get caught by police who are just doing rounds of the sewers. At one point, he has to go through a section where the water comes over his head. Okay. Or when I say water, just know that I mean pee and poop.
Gray water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sewage water. So there's one section where he has to do that, and so he has to lift Marius up so that Marius is above or at least Marius's head is above the slime.
Yeah. And
basically submerge himself, and that's a trial and a half. And there's a few sections like that where it's he's got to go through these just disgusting places.
When I watched the movie, the musical, whatever, every time this sequence happens, I'm like, Marius's injuries are just he's dead, man.
Yeah.
He's full of poop.
Yeah. You'd think, well, he does get very sick after this.
Yeah.
In the book, it takes him months to recover.
Yeah.
So yeah, he probably is getting sewage in his injuries.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, it's not exactly
it's pretty bad.
Disinfectant.
Yeah.
He gets to the end and he runs into a certain ne'er-do-well named Thénardier, who has been using the sewers to sneak around the city to rob people, basically. Who went there after Eponine foiled his plan at Valjean's place. So he is there, and he doesn't recognize Valjean right away because Valjean's face is covered in sewer slime, and he doesn't recognize Marius either because Marius is just a lifeless body. But what he does see is, hey, here's a guy who killed somebody and is trying to hide the body in the sewers. That's what he assumes.
Right.
Valjean doesn't say anything because he thinks his voice will give him away. So then Thénardier basically is trying to make these deals with this guy, oh, I've got the key for the gate up ahead. I'll give you this key if you give me half of what you find on this body. Basically, let me rob the body that you're carrying, and I'll give you the key to escape this place.
Right.
Eventually, that's the deal they kind of come to. Thénardier steals he cuts away part of Marius's jacket.
Right.
And is this way I can blackmail this guy later on if I figure out who it is.
Right.
So that's his evil plan.
Right.
But as they pass Thénardier, they finally get to the gate. They open the gate. They're about to escape when the police are there because the police were following Thénardier, and instead they find a man carrying a almost dead body.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, we found an assassin instead." So the police, I can't remember if Javert is there initially, but Javert is soon there. So
in the movie, he's the only one who was there when he comes out of the sewer with the body.
Okay, no, there's a few of them.
Okay.
And so then what they do is they realize, or they think the body is dead, and they want to know where they can take it to bury him. And they only have the address of Marius's grandfather, because Marius had included that in the letter to Cosette, maybe.
Right.
At some point, Marius had written that down.
Okay.
So they knew where to take him. So Valjean goes with the body, and Javert and whoever other police are there. They take a little cab. They get to the place. They bring the body in. The grandfather is like shocked by the sight, and he's like on the verge of death now himself. Because he's like old too. He's supposed to be like in his 90s.
Okay.
So he's very old. And then the shock of seeing his like one loved grandson dying is too much for him.
Dying and covered in poop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they see a police officer and like a poop stained man carrying him, and they're not very happy about that either. They decide they go to leave, and Valjean asks Javert to take him home so that he just wants to say like one last thing to Cosette or something.
Yeah.
It's like he just wants to go home for a little bit, and is like, you know my address, you know I'm not trying to run from you. Let me just go home. Javert takes him home, and then he's like, oh, we're going to wait outside for you in the cab. Go upstairs, say your goodbyes, and then you're coming with me. And then when Valjean's in the house, he looks outside, and the cab drives away. And that's his signal that, oh, Javert's given up. Javert has this like internal conflict of like, so justice, this man spared him, so he should spare this man. But this guy's a convict, and he's a police, so he cannot spare this man.
Right.
So he goes through these weird like back and forths of like, what is the right thing to do in this situation?
Yeah.
And Hugo describes it as like being very similar to when Valjean is forgiven by the bishop at the very beginning of the book.
Right.
And it's like, oh, this is like his revelation. This is like his coming to God moment kind of thing. But instead of like choosing the right path, Javert just kills himself.
Yep.
He's like, I can't handle this. Peace. Jumps off a dam.
In like the most shocking scene of the musical. I was actually shook when that happened.
Yeah, because he lands on like the dry part. It makes like
Yeah.
a cracking noise.
Yeah.
In the book, it's like he jumps into like water and then is pulled under into a like whirlpool.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, you know he's dead. But in the movie, it's...
Yeah, I remember watching that in the theaters, and I was just like completely shook that that happened.
Yeah,
and
that
it
was
was like, wow.
Major oof moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that happens, and then Valjean, realizing that he's not in danger anymore, I can't remember what exactly happens next. Basically, Marius starts recovering. Valjean starts bringing Cosette over every day to visit him while he's recovering. Marius is like basically in a coma for like months, and they're visiting him every day, and he's not even aware of it. At a certain point, he wakes up, and then the grandfather is like elated. The grandfather recovers from his illness as well. Cosette shows up the next day, and they're like, you two are like, both give you permission to be married. They're super happy about that. They decide to get married. Jean Valjean announces that he's kept all the money from when he was the mayor. Well, he doesn't tell them that part, but he just is like, oh, I have all this money that's to serve as Cosette's dowry, or something.
Right.
And they're like, whoa, 600,000? Like, that's a ton of money.
Right.
And so they're like, oh, we're going to be rich, we're going to be married. And also the grandfather is like, yes, and you guys can have my estate. Like, you guys can live in this house. Like, I'll be living with you in your estate, which is here.
Right.
And so they make all these plans. They also want Valjean to move in. Then on the day of the wedding, Valjean can't come because he says he injured his hand. And so he can't sign any documents either because his hand is injured. And he doesn't show up to the wedding because that's all mad at him. And then he doesn't visit them the next day. He doesn't visit them the day after that. Finally, he comes one day, first thing in the morning, and talks to Marius before Cosette's awake. And he's like, he does the confession thing.
Yeah.
Just to be like, hey, I'm not who you think I am. I am a former convict. I'm wanted for burglary and assassination or something. That comes up a lot, but I can't remember who Valjean is thought to have killed.
Has he killed someone?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Throughout the whole book, I don't think he killed anybody.
Yeah, 'cause
maybe
that was rather sudden.
maybe that's something that Marius thinks because of how long Valjean was in jail.
Right.
Because he, says he was a convict for, like, he was a prisoner for 19 years.
Yeah.
So maybe it was like an assumption, but I don't know. But there's a constant, like, Marius thinks he's a killer.
Right.
And then, so they kind of, like, they have this weird talk. They decide that Valjean's not going to live with them, but that he can come visit Cosette every evening. And then, but not in the main house. They have to meet in, like, this side room in the, like, ground floor.
Okay.
Where he can basically, it's like almost like a basement. It's almost like where I live. No, but it's like this basement, dingy little basement room with a fireplace where he won't be seen going into the main estate.
Right.
So that's the plan. Marius is awkward because on the one hand, he started to like Valjean since he got permission to marry Cosette.
Right.
He also does not recognize Valjean from the barricade at all. Or maybe, I don't think he does. I think he, like, vaguely thinks that he saw him there, but then is like, that's impossible. So I don't know. I can't remember exactly. It comes up later. So then, this is the most heartbreaking part of the book, in my opinion. Valjean wants to visit Cosette every day. Cosette is, like, happily married and is like, why is my dad acting so weird? She starts to withdraw from Valjean a little bit. Marius starts to pull these little, like, sabotage attempts to keep the two apart.
Oh.
Like, he'll make plans to, like, it's like Cosette won't be home in time for the visit, or, like, he removes the furniture from the room of the basement. You're like, oh, we needed it for something, but really, it's like, yeah, there's no place for you to sit here anymore, old man.
Oh, he's
and,
just
like,
an asshole.
Yeah, he does. He pulls these little moves. They're
Wow.
like, but it's like, I don't know. If somebody was like, hey, I murdered someone, but can I still come visit your house every once in a while? I'd be like, maybe I won't give you a chair. I don't know. I don't know,
man. That's hard.
I know. I'm not on Marius' side at all for this
that's
part.
Rough.
It's a very heartbreaking part because it's very slow death of their relationship.
Yeah.
Valjean starts to get really sad when he realizes what's going on. Then he goes through this section where he's like, he starts to age all at once, which sounds crazy, but then I was thinking of, like, even my grandpa was like, like 4 years ago, I was like, he's like a big kind of strong man.
Yeah, there's a tipping point.
And then there's like a certain point where all of a sudden it's like, no, he's like a fragile old man now.
Yeah, there's just a point where you're like, oh, you're actually old.
Yeah, you're old. What happened?
Whoa.
So that's what happens to Valjean.
Yeah.
And he starts going through these walks through the neighborhood. And before he gets to their house every time, he'll, like, stop and, like, no, I can't, and turn around and go back.
Right.
And then eventually, it just describes it as, like, his walk gets shorter and shorter every time. Like, he decides earlier and earlier that he can't go.
Right.
Until he stops leaving his apartment way off, like, blocks away from them.
Yeah.
So he's stuck in his apartment. He's become kind of a shut-in. Meanwhile, Thénardier has gone to Marius. And also Marius has done some investigating of his own, and he thinks that because there was a mysterious Mayor Madeleine, who had all this money and then randomly disappeared. And he thinks that Valjean killed this man and stole his money.
Okay.
And then he's like, okay, because we could probably live off these $3,000 a year I give my grandfather. We don't need the $600,000. And Cosette's like, yeah, whatever, as long as I'm with you. But, like, he doesn't phrase it exactly like that, but he's kind of, like, digging to find out if he'd be okay, because he doesn't want to touch this money if it's blood money.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
So he thinks that, and he also thinks something else Valjean did. There's two things that and he thinks that he does know that Valjean was at the barricade and that Valjean killed Javert.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah. So he remembers Valjean being there, but he doesn't know how the two of them managed to escape the barricade. Right. That's what it is. I knew there was one part he remembered, one part he forgot. So then Thénardier comes to confront Marius to basically be like, hey, did you know there's someone in your house who is a murderer and an assassin and a thief? And then Marius is like, yeah, I know. It's Jean Valjean. And then Thénardier is like totally caught off guard. And also Thénardier gave him a fake name, and Marius right away calls him Thénardier. And he's so like caught off guard by this that he doesn't know what to do.
Right.
It's a pretty funny scene in the book, and it's actually one of the best sections of the book too, because they're like arguing back and forth, and then Mary's like, "No, I can tell you exactly what Valjean did. He murdered Mère Madeleine, and then he killed Javert." And then Thénardier's like, "You idiot! He didn't kill Javert. Javert killed himself, and he didn't murder Mère Madeleine. He is Mère Madeleine. That was a fake identity." The Mary's like, "Wait, really?" Then he's like, "Yeah, but he is still a murderer because guess what? He was carrying a body through the sewer, and I have a piece of jacket to prove it." And the Mary's like, "That's my jacket. That man carried me through the sewer." And then it's like, basically Thénardier accidentally totally I don't know, what's the word for it? Redeem or whatever Valjean's name.
Yeah, he cleared his name.
Yeah.
Redeemed him.
There's a very certain word that I'm thinking of, but I can't quite figure out what it is. But anyway, so he's like, his name is cleared by Thénardier, and then Marius. This is a weird little detail. So Marius decides to, because Thénardier was trying to blackmail him for money.
Right.
And then Marius still thinks that he owes Thénardier for saving his father's life. But at this point, he also knows that Thénardier is a scumbag.
Yeah.
So he's basically like, "I'm going to give you 5,000 francs to just leave the country. Like, thank you for this information. Now get out. Like, I never want to see you again." And then Thénardier is like wanted by all these people and in debt. So he says, sure. Also, Madame Thénardier is dead.
Oh.
She died in prison.
Oh.
And it's just kind of casually mentioned because Thénardier is like, it's mentioned earlier, but then Thénardier is like, "Oh, my poor sick wife." And then Marius is like, "Your wife's not sick, she's dead." And then Thénardier's like, "Oh, okay." Like that was another scam he was trying to run, and Marius would have no part of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, they throw in this little aside about how Thénardier decides to go to America and be a slaver.
Oh.
Which I think is like Hugo's way of being like, look how scummy the people, like the slave traders were.
Yeah.
Like, this is what Thénardier was like. But at the same time, when I read it, I was like, Marius, you just directly funded slavery.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that was a fun little detail to throw in.
That's something.
Marius, anyway, after having all this information, Marius and Cosette go to see Valjean. Valjean has fallen very ill because this is like months after the wedding. He's been shut in for like at least a month.
Yeah.
And he got a fever and it wouldn't go away. The doctor was like, "Oh, there's someone that he's waiting to see before he passes." And then, so Cosette and Marius rushed to see him.
Right. To
be like, "Hey, you can come move back. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to assume these things about you. You told me that you were a convict and a thief, and I assumed the worst. Why didn't you tell me the good details, you jerk?"
You stole a loaf of bread. I assumed you murdered somebody.
Yeah. It's so funny because, like, they basically chastise him for it. Like, you said you were coming clean, but there were so many things you left out of the story. And Valjean's like, "Yeah, I was a fool. But anyway, I'm dying now."
Oof.
And this is the first time I read the book and I didn't cry at the end.
Really?
Yeah, usually I've read the book twice before this, and each time the last, like, 30 pages has just broken me down thoroughly.
Yeah.
This time I was good.
Huh.
Maybe it's because I was dealing with my own personal tragedy.
I feel like you probably had a lot of your own stuff going on right now that this book didn't have such an impact.
But I thought they would combine to make me really sad.
Yeah.
But instead it was like, no, I'm sad about this one thing, so I don't have time to be sad about Les Mis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. So that is the end of Les Mis. Valjean is dying, but Marius and Cosette are happily ever after. They're rich.
Does he die at the end of the book, or is he just dying?
No, I'm pretty sure he's either dead or, like,
about to?
Yeah, because he starts to see the bishop and Fantine, and, like, they're ushering him into heaven, basically, like the way the musical ends.
Way the musical ends, yeah.
Without
Eponine.
Song.
Yeah, without Eponine. Oh,
well,
yeah, Eponine was there.
Eponine is there in the musical.
Jean Valjean dies in the musical.
But I think that's more for the audience, because
Jean Valjean doesn't know who
Jean Valjean
Eponine
doesn't know Eponine at all.
Yeah.
I mean, he saw her when she was a little kid and she was torturing Cosette.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd think of her in his dying moments. Remember that one girl who was mean, but she might have grown up to be kind of nice?
I have no idea what she looks like as an adult, but here she is. They cut all that out of the musical. Like, all of that.
Which part?
Everything that happened after the barricade and the sewer stuff.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of Cosette and Marius' relationship in the musical is like, they just meet, they fall in love at the garden,
then
they
he goes
get
to the
married.
barricade and then they get married.
Yeah.
I remember watching, the last time I watched the musical, which was I guess a couple months ago, I sent you a text to be like, wow, Marius' story is actually really sad. Because he's like this optimistic, hopeful youth who's got all these friends and they're going to change the world and they're going to be amazing. And then all of his friends die and his best friend who was in love with him dies.
Yeah.
And then he falls in love with this girl who he's known for about 2 days. And then they get married immediately. And then he has to go be a rich guy again.
Yeah.
And he loses all of his fight. And then his wife's dad dies. And that's the end of it.
That's the end of it. Yeah, and they kind of cut out the whole thing with Marius being like a jerk to Valjean. Like, it's just kind of like Valjean leaves of his own accord, and they're like, "Why? Why are you gone?" Yeah,
Jean Valjean leaves like on the wedding day, and that's when Thénardier also shows up with a ring to be like, Jean Valjean killed the guy, and here's the ring, and then they have like a funny, oh, that's my ring exchange.
Yeah, yeah. You were saying before about like Thénardier's character, like in the musical, he's just like this funny.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it makes sense 100% why they do that for his stage musical.
Yeah.
But it's like he is like
huge comedic relief. Like, he's over exaggerated and he's funny, and I liked him as a character.
Yeah.
In the book, he's
probably
terrible.
He's probably the main villain in the book.
I would say so. Yeah.
Because even Javert is not like hunting Valjean down, but he's not like really a villain in most scenes.
Javert, I feel like, is not a bad guy.
No.
He's misguided. He thinks he's trying to be the hero.
Yeah.
But he's not a bad guy. Whereas Thénardier is aware he's a bad guy and he's doing bad things and he knows it.
Yeah, they're the two of them are like two sides of like different sides of the same coin kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where they're both like too severe in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, you know, he's so criminal that he's like hurting people and being evil, and Javert is so like by the books and lawful that he's hurting people and kind of being evil about it.
Yeah.
Like lawful evil versus chaotic evil.
That's exactly what it is, yeah. Would Jean Valjean be true neutral?
No, he'd be maybe neutral good.
I guess.
Because he's too, like, everything is about being good with him.
Yeah.
And doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think Eponine would be chaotic neutral.
Is she chaotic?
She's not lawful, but she helps her dad break the law all the time. That is true.
She doesn't seem like an agent of chaos, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Well, the only phrase she knows how to write down is "the police are here, run."
It's true.
So, that's kind of chaotic energy in my books.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I kind of want to just like say like why this is my favorite book.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I'm a horrible, unfeeling monster, and this book makes me feel things. So there's that. I did get into it because I liked the musical originally.
Right.
And then the book kind of like gave more detail and filled out the characters more. And I like that.
Right.
It also, I find the book does this thing where it's like, you have these little like side stories or adventures where it's like, here, we're going to go deep dive into Fantine. Like this character who is kind of unimportant gets like a whole like little novella to herself in the beginning of this book.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like, yeah, I would, if this book came out now, I could see it being split into 5 books.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. This seems like it could have been cut up into multiple.
Yeah.
Like, and released in a series or something.
And I don't know enough about how it was originally released. It could have very well been like that. But yeah, like I just, there's a lot of like little things. Like I love like Fantine section is so good. And like, her like trying to do the right thing but like getting screwed over by the system constantly feels like some good social commentary for France in the 1800s. And like it's just, I don't know, I enjoy the characters. I like the world. Last time I was kind of like,
you like the world, you like 18th century France.
Yeah, I like that universe. No, but just the way like in this book, the way like Paris feels so vast, but also like very interconnected.
Yeah, yeah.
Where it's like, here's these people who keep running into each other. Here's like this myriad of characters who are all interacting in some way. Like there's a lot of like side characters I left out in my thing because I don't remember them.
Right.
But like, you know, Gavroche had 2 younger brothers who showed up at one point who he like took under his wing, and like then they're all connected to the Thénardiers, and then they're connected to the other criminals, and the other criminals are like sort of connected to the revolutionaries a little bit, and like, you know, like there's this vast web, and like the way it all fits together is really fun.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and there's something else I was gonna say. Oh, a couple weeks ago you were asking about favorite characters.
Yes.
And you asked about if Valjean is one of my favorite characters, and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like to change that I don't know to a full blown yes, 100%.
Okay.
Like he's so like, I like the way that he thinks, or like that Hugo goes through the way he thinks before his decisions.
Right.
Like he has these like, basically where he's like wrestling with an idea where he's like, should I do this or should I not? And like he's always like compelled by these like what is the right thing, even if it's not like good for me, like even if this is going to hurt me in the long run, but I want to do the right thing.
Right.
I don't know, I feel like there's something very admirable about the way his character is portrayed.
Sure.
And you know, he gets a very sad ending, so
yeah,
of course I love it.
Yeah, he does.
But yeah, I would 100% recommend this book to anyone who likes classic literature. If you like the musical, I still stand by my Barnes and Noble abridged edition. It's like 800 pages as opposed to 1200.
Yeah.
It is like, it cuts out the whole section describing French thieves' cant or argot or argot or whatever. It cuts out cuts down the sewers section dramatically. It dramatically cuts down the section of Hugo wandering through a battlefield and describing what he sees. Like, there's a lot of sections that Hugo included because he's probably being paid per page or something.
I read that he was being paid per word.
Per word?
Yep.
My man. Look in the system.
I don't know how true it is, but that is something I just read recently, was that he was paying per word.
Well, Dickens was too.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because in my edition of Tale of Two Cities, they say that right at the beginning, is that he was being paid per word, so there's a lot of sections that feel unnecessary.
Yeah.
But Tale of Two Cities is one of his shorter books. Like, David Copperfield is super long.
Yep. I mean, you just make that bank. There's no problem with that.
Yeah. And it's also too, like, it feels longer because of the style of language.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, we can bust through a 1,000-page book that's written now and not think that it was too long.
No.
Like, Name of the Wind is a super long book. It's like close to 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
But I don't think of it as a long book because I read it in like 2 afternoons.
Yeah. When you have to think really hard, I guess, about like the style of writing and what you're reading, it takes more effort.
Yeah.
And that makes it feel like you're spending a lot more time reading it than
that's right. Like, there's some books where, like, because I have a little thing on my phone that tracks like my productivity or whatever.
Yeah.
And it'll do 25-minute sessions. And there's some books where a 25-minute session will be like 15 pages.
Yeah.
And other books where it's closer to 50 pages.
Yeah.
And it's just like, depending on the style and the whatever, I don't think Les Mis is too like obtuse, the style. Like, it's fairly easy and also like kind of poetic.
Yeah. It's not like trying to read Jane Austen, which I always kind of struggle with.
Yeah. It is. I'd say it's easier than Austen.
Yeah.
At least the translation that I have.
Yeah. I imagine having an abridged version helps with that as well.
Yeah. Well, and also, too, with any book that wasn't originally in English.
Oh, translators.
The translator.
We talked about this with the...
Don Quixote.
In the Don Quixote episode, translators.
So, I'm sure you could find an edition of Les Mis that's
super
torture to read through.
Really hard to read, yeah.
But the version that I have was very excellent. It's like, I don't have it with me, so I can't tell you exactly what it was. But it's a Barnes and Noble's abridged edition. It's like the brown cover one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah.
We are a little bit over time.
A little bit, but we have been for all these episodes. Kind of worked out.
Yeah, oh yeah. Danny, where can... Oh, Should we talk about what we're doing next? What are you reading these days?
So, because you've been busy, you didn't listen to the last episode that I did by myself.
Yeah.
I have started reading a little series called Immortals After Dark.
Again?
Yeah.
Wait, you're rereading them?
I'm listening to them while I'm working.
Okay.
I'm not technically rereading them. I'm listening to them. But yeah, I started over.
Okay.
I'm about 3 books in.
All right.
So that's what I've been doing.
Okay.
I will finish something else to talk about, I promise.
Okay.
Well,
I think next week, I might be doing Call of the Wild.
Right, because that movie's coming out soon, right?
Movie's coming out,
I saw a trailer for that, like, a couple days ago.
Yeah, it's either out right now or it's out next weekend.
Okay, cool. That'd be pretty cool.
And I just started rereading the book, and I'm already, like, almost halfway done.
Yeah.
Through one afternoon of reading, so I'm pretty confident I'll have it done in time.
Excellent. I never read that one.
It's very... Well, it's good, but I feel like... I don't know. I feel like it's good for a very certain audience.
Right.
Like, because it's all about, like, escaping the shackles of civilization and, like,
running off
finding your, like, true, like, primal nature.
Okay, cool.
But told through the perspective of a dog.
Okay.
And there's a lot of, like, animal violence in the book. Like, tons of it.
Okay.
And because you have to be, like, used to, like, how people in that era would treat animals. But it's also supposed to be bad. Like, it's like, you're not supposed to be, like, yeah, beat that dog. You're supposed to be, like, these people are horrible, evil people.
Right. Right.
So it's not like justified beating. It's like, this man is evil. I want him to die.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's and then lots of like dogs like killing each other and stuff. That goes into pretty graphic detail of like them fighting.
Okay. All right. So,
but
for next time then. Yeah,
it's very intense and pretty short. If you guys are listening to this, you can definitely read it in a week for next week if you're interested.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we might be talking about that next time.
Cool.
And then Danny's gonna have something for time after that.
It won't be about vampires, I promise.
Okay. Where can people find us?
They can find us on Facebook, Literary AF. You can find us on Twitter, LiteraryAFPod. You can Gmail us at literaryafpod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And you can listen to our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Podbean, and iTunes, Literary AF.
And you can also find us, I was going to say YouTube, but then that was the first thing you mentioned for where they could listen to us. So I'll just say it again. Listen to us on YouTube.
On YouTube.
We have 5 subscribers on there.
Yeah, it's not our big platform.
No, we just have random episodes spike on there.
Yeah, I think our Pride and Prejudice episode got like added to a playlist of basically every Pride and Prejudice ever on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think like the playlist is just playing, and we're getting a lot of hits off of that.
All right.
Yeah. I
Very
checked
cool.
it once through YouTube Analytics because I was like, why is this so high compared to everything else?
Yeah, we had like 3 episodes that have like popped.
Yeah.
And then other episodes that are like 1 view, 0 views.
Yeah.
But
YouTube's not our main platform.
No.
But
yeah.
It is what it is.
And yeah, so if you want to reach out to us, whatever Danny said.
All those places. Or you can reach out to me on Twitter at Danny_Reads.
Or you can find me on Twitter at, I can't tell you, it's a secret.
Ooh.
With an ad at the front.
It's a secret.
I can't tell you, _it's a secret. Yeah, so thank you for listening, and tune in next week when we talk about dog murder.
Oh no.